Studio J, the White House. Our headliner today, Counsel to the President, Kellyanne Conway. And welcome back, Kellyanne. It's great to have you back here.
Hi, Bill.
On America's Newsroom. Can you confirm a meeting late on Sunday night with the President, Brett Kavanaugh? And if so, was that the clincher for this nomination?
I will not confirm that, but I will tell you that the President went through a very deliberative process. Obviously has 25, minus Neil Gorsuch, judges and distinguished scholars to choose from on his list, and he had a very transparent and accountable process, landed on an incredibly sharp legal mind, has authored over 300 opinions, is getting praise left, right, and center from those who are actually rational about his nomination. This presidency is on a roll. It's a typical Tuesday morning here. The president has nominated a Supreme Court justice and is on his way to the NATO summit and meeting with Vladimir Putin, a stop at the UK, and continue to bring peace and prosperity throughout the world. But we really want the Senate to give Judge Kavanaugh his due, to meet with him privately and individually, and then also to confirm him in an expeditious process, the way this Senate has confirmed a number of other Supreme Court justices over the years. He should be seated before the October term.
When did he make up his mind then? Was it yesterday or was it Sunday, or can you nail that down for us?
Well, I could, but I'm not going to do that because I'll leave the TikTok to the president. Because what's the point? It doesn't matter. The matter is where he landed. He landed on a man who has sat on the D.C. Circuit, the court right below the United States Supreme Court, where he has authored a breadth of opinions that people should go and look. If you listen to a lot of commentators on cable news and elsewhere on Twitter, they act like the Supreme Court only talks about abortion and Roe versus Wade. If you look at the last 2 weeks of the Supreme Court's term this year, the breadth and the depth of the opinions that they actually issued gives you a clue as to what they consider in a I would say typical term. And so this is a man who has presided over any number of cases that deal with personal liberties, pocketbook issues, administrative actions, and he is incredibly qualified. I give President Trump enormous credit because we saw up close and personal how deliberative he was about this process.
And he's getting a lot of praise this morning, Kellyanne.
He is, right, left, and center.
As far as Democrats are concerned, because obviously everybody's trying to do the calculations of what's needed for this confirmation process and to actually see him get confirmed, which the president obviously sees that happening, or he wouldn't have made this particular pick. That being said, red state Democrats, we know the president invited several to the White House, and they declined those invitations of the president, talking about Doug Jones, Joe Manchin, Heidi Heitkamp, Joe Donnelly. Does the president expect to get support from any of those red state Dems?
Well, if these Democrats, whether they're in red states, blue states, or purple states, actually look at the qualifications of Judge Brett Kavanaugh, they really have no choice but to confirm him. If it's based on pure politics, then some will do what they usually do, hold up their stop sign, scream, resist, obstruct, stop, fight to the death to stop him. But if they're being honest, and it's a matter of policy and principle and personal qualifications, just the professional and personal pedigree of this man and his time on the bench already, then if they're being honest and they're doing what they promised their voters they would do, which is to make sure that the judiciary is filled with folks who are faithful to the Constitution and won't make up the laws as they go along. That's really all the president asks, and I think whether you're a red state Democrat, a purple state Democrat, you're in cycle, you're not in cycle this time, if you're honest about the process, you will give this man his due and eventually a thumbs-up vote. Now, everybody should be concerned. Every voter out there who's represented by a senator who said that they would vote against the president's nominee to the United States Supreme Court before they even heard the name, that's troubling. That's problematic. That is not the way a democracy and federalism is meant to work. The Senate advises and consents, and then the Senate votes to confirm or deny a president's nominations to the judiciary so that all three branches are duly involved. They're not doing their jobs if they're telling you from the beginning, I will vote against a Trump nominee to the United States Supreme Court. What is their objection to Brett Kavanaugh? Do they want somebody who went to Yale College and Yale Law School, who's authored over 300 opinions, who is being praised right, left, and center? He's being called a judge's judge, who has a very sharp legal mind, who held forth last night and treated the entire world to his personal background, how important family and faith is to him, how he met his wife, what he did when he was in the Bush White House.
You know, he made a point in his speech last night, Kavanaugh, to really make sure that it was known that he surrounds himself with strong, powerful women, whether it was talking about his daughters, his mother, his wife, and those that he has worked with and around.
His law clerks, a majority of his law clerks have been female.
Here's what one Democrat, Kirsten Gillibrand, to answer your question, what do they want? Here's what she says about this pick, and I'll get your response.
Everyone here knows what is at stake. What is at stake is women's freedom. Our freedom to make our own decisions, and we will fight. We will not give up. We will not grow weary. We will not give in.
How does the president respond to that? What's at stake is women's freedom.
I have no idea what she's talking about, neither does she, and here's why. They talk in these big sweeping statements. They only talk about abortion, essentially. I miss the Kirsten Gillibrand, who was a congresswoman from upstate New York for many years, who was reasonable and rational in her voting behaviors, who was center-right, center-left, but obviously a centrist and a moderate. Now, if Senator Gillibrand is not willing to do her job, which is to sit and meet with Judge Kavanaugh and actually ask him those questions about, quote, women's freedom, I guess he's too polite to ask her something I'll ask her right now, which is, if you're so concerned about women's freedom, why did you vote against $6 billion in opioid funding? Why did you vote against $4 billion in school safety? Why did you vote against a massive tax cut that and the deregulation that's led to the lowest unemployment rate among women in decades? If you believe in women's freedom, why are you against school choice and charters, which allows a lot of these moms to take their kids out of failing schools and give them better opportunities? If you're for women's freedom, why don't you trust them enough to make their own decisions financially, economically?
So we know
what she's boiling it down to one issue. But you reminded me, thank you for showing that clip of Senator Gillibrand, because you remind me of what was happening last night. They had these signs, stop, and then it was fill in the blank, and they were ready for all four of the nominees, which goes back to my original point. They're going to resist and obstruct anybody the president nominates. You know, that's on them, not him. And secondly, did you see what the Women's March press release said?
We saw it all, and we reported all of it.
Forgot to fill in the name. Right. It's so brilliant.
I think when Senator Kennedy announced his retirement, there were a number of senators came to the White House. I think Murkowski and Collins, Republicans, were there. Do you know how they feel about Brett Kavanaugh? Well, they can vote to confirm him or not, Kellyanne?
Well, that's up to those senators, and we respect the fact that each senator has an individual vote, and I expect that Senator Murkowski and Senator Collins will do what they always do, which is give a fair hearing one-on-one, meet with Judge Kavanaugh individually. We have the great Senator John Kyle from Arizona, former senator of 18 years, spent many years on the Judiciary Committee. He will be shepherding Judge Kavanaugh. Judge will be up with the Vice President Mike Pence this afternoon on Capitol Hill.
But you don't know if they're automatic yeses, correct, on Murkowski and Collins?
I know that they will be fair and open-minded,
okay.
and that is wonderful to see. I also just want to say about each and every senator that if they just give time to Judge Kavanaugh, I think they'll see what President Trump saw in him and choosing him, which is somebody who's fair and independent and open-minded. And also, here's an important word for the judiciary: humble. There's a certain humility that attaches to these jobs that have such gravity and responsibility. And the humility, I think, the whole world saw last night, but I'm sure it will be displayed one-on-one as well.
So we know the president and the first lady are en route to on their trip to Europe, and they're embarking on a major mission there. As we know, the president has been very clear. NATO countries must pay more. The United States must pay less. Very unfair, the president tweeted this morning. But actually, I want to reference back, Kellyanne, to our White House reporter, Kevin Corke, just showed us the EU president, ahead of the president's visit there, wrote, "Dear America, appreciate your allies. You don't have that many." What tone is the president hoping to strike with our allies on this trip?
Well, that's a very unfortunate statement. We have many, many allies, and obviously this president has gone on so many foreign trips, and he's also invited so many foreign leaders to the White House since he's been here. He's had many opportunities to have bilateral engagements, and they've been, again, transparent for all the world to see. He's also participated in multilateral meetings and summits like the upcoming NATO summit. The president's been very clear that we are committed to the NATO alliance, but he's also wants everybody to pay their fair share. This president feels like this country's been the world's piggy bank for far too long. We've been taking advantage, whether it's unreciprocal, unfair, imbalanced trade deals, or the fact that we pay dues. And look, every time he pulls out, he does things like pull out of the Paris Accords, pull out of the Iran nuclear agreement, move the capital to Jerusalem and recognize it as, well, move the embassy and recognize Jerusalem as a capital of Israel. Every time he's told you can't do something, you shouldn't do it, things will fall apart. He follows the advice, the policy advice he gets, and he goes with his campaign promises, and he makes a difference. And others are going to have to come on board as well and recognize that this president is more than happy to engage. He's done it so many times.
Big meetings,
so,
and every day,
meetings,
literally. Whether
yes.
it's NATO or whether it was Theresa May in London, and whether it's Vladimir
yes.
Putin that wraps up the trip in Helsinki
yes.
next Monday.
Yes.
He was asked about Putin earlier today when he left the White House and said this.
Frankly, Putin may be the easiest of them all. As far as I'm concerned, a competitor. It's a competitor. I think that getting along with Russia, getting along with China, getting along with others is a good thing, not a bad thing.
What he said was, I have NATO, I have the UK. That's a situation with turmoil, talking about the reference to Brexit ongoing there. Putin may be the easiest of all. Will he tell Vladimir Putin to not meddle in American elections?
They will discuss any range of issues, particularly those that affect the world's security. The president has made very clear that we don't recognize the annexing of Crimea. This president has been really tough when he needed to be, expelling Russians from our country, issuing sanctions, pushing back against President Putin and others who were propping up Assad as he gassed his own people not once but twice. This president took swift and decisive action. But at the same time, this president has already sat down with President Putin, because this president makes very clear that if there is an opportunity for Russia and the U.S. to work together in the furtherance of peace and prosperity around the globe, he will do that.
But you have a bipartisan U.S. Senate report that's saying Moscow, they were all over 2016. Will he address that directly with Vladimir Putin, yes or no?
Well, it was addressed previously, as you know. And if he addresses, let's just make very clear the difference between that report about interference, about the fact that Russia wanted to interfere in the elections, tried to interfere in the elections, and what we were promised beginning 18 months ago, and in some corners still, which is collusion that had a direct nexus to the election results that swung the election of Donald Trump. Nobody's even saying that anymore, Bill and Sandra. Nobody's even saying that anymore. But boy, were they saying it. Want to see the clips? I've got them ready for you. Boy, were they promising. Well, that's right. They did not swing the election result. The only person who still talks about that once in a while is the person who lost the election, because the person who lost the election won't admit why she lost the election, which is very simple to see.
But despite all that, and I accept the argument you're making here.
Well, that's important, though.
I
People
agree,
said we're going to nullify his election.
But this is important.
There was collusion. We're going to impeach him.
I get it, but as President of the United States, you're talking about democratic process and keeping it pure. Why not take this on a conversation?
Secretary Pompeo has said that. When he was CIA director, he has said that. Our intelligence community has said that. Director Coates has said that. We don't want anybody interfering in our democracy. Anybody interfering in our democracy. But it is foolish for anybody to still be going back to 2016, almost 2 years ago now, and trying to pretend that that election result was what it was. 305 electoral votes happened because of any outside interference. If you go back and look at the money that was spent, the value of what was spent, it couldn't have swung a local dog catcher election. And people know it when they're being honest.
Kellyanne, real quick, the president responded this morning to the number of families being detained at the border. This was after this judge rejected the administration's request for long-term detention of immigrant children. It was basically seeking a modification to the Flores agreement. The judge dismissed this as dubious. Does the president see this as a major legal setback for him and his team?
Well, it shows again that when Congress fails to act, we get one judge basically setting immigration policy for the whole country, albeit temporarily. This Congress has fallen down on the job when it comes to executing on the president's 70-point plan, which got boiled down to a 4-point plan on immigration reform. He's the one who had Democrats and Republicans from the House and the Senate in the cabinet room for 1 hour in January talking about DACA, the Dreamers, and elsewise. I don't hear the Democrats talking about that anymore at all. They've moved on to this issue. And on the matter of reunifying these families, I can tell you, as someone who's in the meetings with DHS and HHS and DOJ and others, people are trying to do what can be done at the highest levels of our government. The Flores Agreement ties the hands and that you can't go past 20 days. Why is that problematic? In some cases, it's been revealed that people aren't actually the children's parents. We're trying to protect the children by making sure that it's actually a parent, someone who's not just grabbing a child to mean them harm, because they know it's easier to cross over and stay on this side of the border if you have a child with you and you're posing as a parent. We're trying to protect those children to ensure that the person who has them is a family or a custodian, family member or custodian, or someone who also doesn't have a criminal background. Also, these things take some time, but I'm telling you that a lot of work is going into this at the highest levels in our administration, and that those children are being cared for in ways that meets the standards in many places, meets the standard of care. And so we need more time. But the Congress should act. This Congress should come back and do its job and act.
Listen, we went through a lot of things. We've got 100 more questions, but maybe we'll save a few for next time.
You got it. Take care. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.